Well, good afternoon. How's everyone today? We appreciate your patience as we get started here. My name is Dr. Mena Demisay, Vice President of Policy Analysis and Research with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. We are very excited because there's a lot going on here, a lot of important conversations, but you're in here because you care about Black women's leaders and access to capital. So we have a very dynamic panel for you today. I do want to let you know that Congresswoman Clark may stop by to bring greetings, and if she does, we'll of course pause so she can talk about her leadership on the Small Business Committee. What I can tell you about this particular panel, I'm a political scientist, so I'm fascinated by these dynamic women leaders and all that they do in business. As some of you may know, we started executive economic summits focusing on minority access to capital late last year. And the goal being to really hear from folks who look like us, who are in the work, and again, to reverse and demystify this notion that in the struggle to access capital, folks are not already doing that, right? And part of it is to hear their stories and know how they made it this far. And, you know, I've always talked about the different statistics that are there, but often we see one of the largest explanatory variables kind of affecting and, you know, the opportunities for folks to grow is information flow and networks. So we actually wanted to change things up a little bit here and have folks share their personal stories as well as their expertise and their sort of professional background. So you'll hear a little bit about their sort of success stories from a personal standpoint. And then, of course, we have the awesome and amazing renowned economist, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who's no stranger to anyone in this room, to guide us into a really good and useful, informative conversation. I want to definitely thank our sponsors, Bank of America, General Motors, and JP Morgan Chase and Company, who have been with us, supporting us and sponsoring this panel. I bring you greetings from our President and CEO, Shawnice Washington. And what I would like to do at this time is introduce to you Felicia Lewis, who is the director at the Financial Center Regional Executive at Bank of America. She currently serves as the Small Business Banking Manager for the Metro Atlanta market at the Bank of America and holds direct responsibility for bottom line revenues generation, leadership development, and client satisfaction for a team of bankers who represent over 10,000 clients. Prior to holding this role, she managed the consumer and business product line for BB&T with responsibility for 775,000 households and 18 core products. She also co-chaired the Products and Services Committee, which consisted of C-level executives with responsibility for go, no-go decisions enterprise-wide. She also led company-wide revenue initiatives with year-one fee income projections of $18.2 million. Felicia has provided market leadership for a group of financial centers, which represents over $2.25 billion in deposits. Her team expanded this client base with a focus on deepening wallet share, client satisfaction, and community development involvement. Prior to joining BB&T, Felicia served as the Small Business Product Development and Marketing Manager for Compass Bank. Success in this role was accomplished through business analytics and segmentation, line of business partnerships, and cross-sell and retention initiatives. While with Compass, she also obtained her Series 7 and 63 investment licenses. So I'd like you all to put your hands together for brief remarks from Felicia Lewis with Bank of America.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Wonderful, wonderful to be with you, and thank you very much for that very kind introduction. As she stated, my name is Felicia Lewis. I am the Regional Sales Executive for the Greater D.C. region, which encompasses a portion of Maryland, Virginia, as well as the District of Columbia. I've got one of my teammates here with me in the back, Rob Scott. So Rob, as always, thank you. He is on the ground here in D.C. doing wonderful things with our team and really ensuring that we take care of our clients. On behalf of Bank of America, I am quite honored, frankly, to be here with you. It is our honor as an organization to continue to advance the conversation as it relates to really helping women entrepreneurs make sure they have access to capital. You know, frankly, this is a topic that's pretty important to me personally. As you heard a little bit about my bio and about my background, I've been in small business for quite some time. And several years ago, frankly, it's 1998, I've frankly never forgotten this, I had one of my clients reach out to me, and he needed funding to buy a building. Mm-hmm. And being the great banker that I was, I got him funding for that specific building. But I fell short. So fast forward maybe about 9-12 months later, this same client called me back, and he said, Felicia, I need your help again. The economy's had a bit of a downturn. My client's not paying me as fast as I would like. Therefore, I can't pay you, and I can't pay my other creditors. I need a line of credit to bridge the gap. Can you help me? Of course, I would have loved to help, but as you can imagine, by that time, his credit had taken a significant downturn. His cash flow was poor. I couldn't help. I've never forgotten that story because as a professional banker, it was my responsibility at the time he asked me for the original loan in the first place to really help him think ahead to not only the short-term credit need that you have, but frankly the long-term credit need that you have, as well as the credit card solutions, merchant services, payroll, everything else that the organization that I work for could have and should have provided. And so that's why I am so passionate when it comes to cash flow for business owners, when it comes to the conversation not just around your immediate need, but everything that's involved in running a business. So again, I'm proud to really be in front of you and represent you from behalf of Bank of America. When I think about some of the things that we do, we've had an opportunity to partner with community development financial institutions, better known as CDFIs. And I became really intimately familiar with them when I was in Georgia leading a business team, because we would have clients that would come to us and they would need funding that didn't necessarily fit within our buy box. And I got tired of, honestly, turning those clients away. I got tired of us not having a solution for them. And thankfully, what I realized was our organization already had relationships with CDFIs across the network where we could partner with and make sure those clients had access to funding. We've got partnerships right now with 240 CDFIs across the country, where we've been able to help 700 clients have access to $20 million that we've committed to. We also have partnerships with the Tory Burch Foundation, and through that we've been able to help clients in the apparel industry, we've been able to help clients in the manufacturing industry, and various others who may not necessarily have had an opportunity to have access to capital. So I say all that to say, Bank of America is committed to truly helping women and frankly all entrepreneurs have access to capital. It is a personal investment of myself because I have family members who run businesses, and it's a personal investment for my teammates as well on a day-to-day basis. So as we can help you, it is absolutely our pleasure as we go forward to do so. So with that, I want to again thank you all for being here. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I know that we're going to hear some wonderful things from this panel. So thank you all very much.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Lewis. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and we have the distinguished honor of being joined by Congresswoman Yvette Clarke from the great state of New York, who's been a fierce leader and supporter of business development, obviously because of not only her committee responsibilities, but because she cares. She cares in her capacity as a member of Congress, but also as a woman of color. She has been a longtime supporter of our initiatives at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and I always like to say a fellow Oberlin graduate, which makes me so very proud. So please give it up for the Honorable Yvette Clarke.
Let me thank Dr. Malveaux for that wonderful introduction. It's always great to be introduced by a fellow OB. I see our chairman, Mr. Donahue, is here with us, Mr. Donahue Peoples, to President Shawnese Washington, and to everyone here gathered. I see my former colleague, Laura Richardson, is here as well. A pleasant good afternoon, everyone. It's certainly my honor and my privilege to come this afternoon and hear from our very distinguished panel of experts on the subject of Black women entrepreneurs and the crucial role that access to capital plays in the development of the growth and development of their enterprises. I want to once again thank the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation for inviting me here today to share just a few thoughts on the issue as we delve into subject matter that in many ways is a significant part of the lifeblood of many Black families and by extension our communities. And I'd like to say that we're trying to get past the anemic stage. And that's what I think our panelists will discuss with us in their presentations. I want to especially thank Dr. Mena Demisi and President Shawnese Washington for their commitment to entrepreneurship, Black women enterprises. It's wonderful that they have taken the time to bring us and convene us in this way, bring us together. I'm certain that our conversation will not end here today, but will reverberate at every level of government, from our municipal legislative bodies to the halls of Congress. Your participation here this afternoon and your ideas will form the basis for policies that transform our society and address inequities that persist across the that have persisted across the United States for generations now. As a 10-year member of the House Small Business Committee, I have been consistent in my support and advocacy for our small business sector across this nation, of course, in my beloved Brooklyn, New York, a sector in which African American women have begun to achieve considerable success. Nearly half of Black-owned companies are owned by Black women, and 14% of women-owned companies are owned by Black women. These 1.3 million firms generated an estimated $52.6 billion in revenue in 2015. African American women are becoming more and more prominent as entrepreneurs, starting the companies that generate wealth and provide jobs in our communities. But for very selfish reasons, I feel compelled to do everything in my power to provide the policy support needed to build successful companies that afford employment opportunities to communities of color. Why do I say selfish reasons? Well, I look out at the landscape across this nation. I look particularly at communities of color, at Black communities, and I never fail to see the unemployed. I never fail to see the young men who, healthy, strong, have the ability, but have no employment opportunities. If we empower our entrepreneurs, we are then empowering those young people with endless opportunities and indeed empowering our nation. So for, again, selfish reasons, I am compelled to do everything in my power to make sure that we open up the floodgates of opportunities to our entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, there are those businesses in our society that continue to be that continue to discriminate based upon race in their employment practices, and this has continued to produce an employment deficit for the last hired and the first fired. Our greatest line of defense, the growth and development of Black-owned and operated businesses. I have sponsored legislation to increase the availability of low-interest loans for the owners of small businesses, particularly companies owned by women and people of color, to support veteran-owned small businesses, and to improve the process by which the Small Business Administration provides assistance to small business owners. And we must continue our efforts to expand access to capital, which has historically been denied to our communities. We must look to both traditional and non-traditional lending instruments to fortify the ability of Black women entrepreneurs to grow their companies into corporate entities that, in my mind, can one day during our lifetimes be traded on NASDAQ as Fortune 500. Hello, somebody. We must encourage our entrepreneurs to follow their visions, to expand and use their expertise in those spaces and industries where we are rarely and barely visible. For example, I recently founded and serve as chair of the Congressional Multicultural Media Caucus, which has been examining the best methods to increase diversity and inclusion in the greater media universe, not only on the screen, but also among writers, directors, producers, as well as, most importantly, in ownership. New York City, my town, has more than twice as many African American residents as any other city, yet we lack even a single radio station owned by an African American. This caucus will diligently transform the media landscape to be far more inclusive in the ownership space. And in collaboration with the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, the Small Business Administration, and other federal agencies and private companies, open up this very crucial industry to those whose stories are being told and shaped through its ecosystem and instruments. I and my colleagues have resolved that we will not stop, we will not yield, and we will not allow the hands of time to spin in reverse, and that instead we will build on our recent successes among our Black women-owned businesses, support companies owned by these women, help them to build wealth, help them to create jobs. So I want to thank our very distinguished panelists here today and our moderator, Dr. Malveaux, for their continued support in this space, for being a resource to each and every one of us. And let us connect the dots today. Let us not just come and be passive listeners, but let us look at ways that we can undergird, support, and connect with one another so that we can make sure that we sustain our movement and our commitment to the growth of a corporate sector that, like I said, is traded on NASDAQ. Everyone, thank you for coming out today. I'd like to acknowledge that we've been joined by my senator, Senator Kevin Parker, and enjoy this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Clark, for all that you do and for your remarks. We have the pleasure, as she mentioned, of being joined by our chairman of our board of directors at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Ronald Donahue Peoples, who also is no stranger to anyone in this room. He's a businessman, entrepreneur, the founder of the Peoples Corporation, and has done, in fact, earlier when I mentioned this vision of our economic summits, it was his brainchild that, we are implementing as we speak. So look out to hear more about that, by the way, in November, where we'll be heading to Atlanta to look at Black women's access to capital. So we'll continue the work and the conversation. But without further ado, he would like to bring brief remarks. So please put your hands together for Mr. Donahue Peoples.
I promise I won't talk too long. But by the way, it's Don Peoples, Donahue, nothing like Donald. Okay? I'm a New York developer with an office on Fifth Avenue, but I am completely different. So look, I want to also say hello to and to recognize one of my city's Congress members, Yvette Clarke. Yvette Clarke has done an amazing job in terms of empowering African American and women-owned businesses, and so we owe her a great deal of gratitude. I especially wanted to stop by and give some remarks, and I won't take much time because you have some brilliant entrepreneurs here to give you some insight into the opportunities and some of the challenges in business. But this is a personal issue for me because I was raised by my mother. My mother had me at 19 years old when she was a secretary, and she got her real estate sales license because she was buying a home in Prince George's County, not far from here, and a subdivision, saw the sales agent, how much money the sales agent made for such little work, because she walked in, bought a house, and not a lot of work. So a lot of money for very little work. Good balance, by the way. I try to practice that as much as I can, too. And so she got a real estate sales license and then went on and built a brokerage business. And that was my exposure to business and to real estate. My mother had me, as I said, at 19. So by the time I was a teenager, we were more friends, and I was an advisor to a degree. And what I learned is that chauvinism didn't have any racial boundaries, by the way. And I think these women will tell you that as well. So it's not just about people of color. It's also about women getting access to fair opportunities. And I can tell you that is far more challenging. And I think it is very difficult as an African-American entrepreneur. I know it is even more difficult as a woman going into business, no matter what color, but especially black women going into business, extremely challenging. And so those who succeed are outliers. So we got to change that. We've got to level the playing field so that everybody gets access to an opportunity. So I learned from my mother, and what was a small little brokerage company now is a company that I run. It's a $4 billion development business that does business around the country. And what she told me is nothing was impossible, that whatever the goal was, if I was willing to work hard to achieve it, it could be done. It's going to be more difficult, but it can be done. And so that is the concept of what you're going to hear today, is anything is possible. And you're going to hear it in so many different spaces. And the fuel, like our cars need fuel, so with gasoline, unfortunately, hopefully more and more electricity. And we need fuel, food. Well, business, the fuel for business is capital, access to capital. I happen to be in a real estate business, so we're constantly raising capital. It's the number one thing I have to do. Our buildings cost between $300 and $500 million to build, and in 3 years, I'm out borrowing more money to build again. So I borrow billions of dollars, and it is the biggest challenge. And it's in a city which the number one product is capital, money. They rent money. That's what New York City does. And so it's a city that Ms. Clark forgot to just give you the percentage. It's 67% minority, okay? 67% minority, and it is 29% African American. And so, but yet there are no major businesses. I'm the only developer who owns a major building in Manhattan, south of Harlem. And so why is that? Want to hear something interesting? The city's pension system lends less than, has less than 2% of its money managed by minorities or women-owned businesses. That's the problem. It's who is making the capital decisions. So no discussion about access to capital can take place without looking at and redefining who makes these decisions. Because business people, we all know this, business people are efficient. So it's no longer about race as much, it's about efficiency. Business people do business with the people they know, they do business with their friends, and they do business with people who have paid them back time and time again, because it's easy. They know they're going to get paid back. So where does that leave us? Leaves us left out. So we have to change that. Changing that through the political process and the legislative process to mandate that at least we as women and minorities get a equal share of access to capital. So if New York City is 53% female, which it is, then 53% of its pension system money should be managed by women-owned businesses, right? If it's 29% African American, then 29% of its money should be managed by African Americans and so on. So that's a challenge. And I leave you all to start looking at how you can help these people here understand how you've unlocked the code here, because all of you have unlocked that code, and how do we make it easier so that we can create more opportunities. So thank you. You've got a wonderful panel here. It's great being here, and let's unlock the code and get access to more capital so that we know that if our young people have jobs, they don't commit crimes. We know that if our young men don't have jobs, they are going to look for other alternatives. So the challenge for our community is economics. We can take care of ourselves. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chairman Peoples. I should let you know I'm halfway through the People's Principles book that you gave me, so I'm at... Oh, of course. It's fascinating. All right. So one more round of remarks, which I'm actually very honored to introduce to you Joanne J. Hill from the United States Department of Commerce, and she'll be able to set the framework of what the administration has been doing in this space before we move into our panel. So she is a native of Columbia, South Carolina, and she is with the Minority Business Development Agency at the U.S. Department of Commerce. She has served at the MBDA for 15 years, and in her current capacity has oversight of the Office of Business Development and has served as the lead federal program officer for the nationwide network of more than 40 business centers that generate $6 billion in performance goals annually. She's responsible for the creation and implementation of strategies for business development in the areas of access to capital, to contracts, and access to emerging domestic and international markets and global supply chains. Additionally, Ms. Hill facilitates stakeholder collaboration with chambers of commerce and trade associations. She engages in international business initiatives, both domestically and abroad, designed to promote business-to-business linkages. So without further ado, please put your hands together for Chief of Business Development with the United States Department of Commerce, Joanne J. Hill.
So good afternoon. I want to first start off with a show of hands for how many women in here are business owners. So we have a gauge. Excellent. Okay. So I myself am not an entrepreneur, but I have spent my entire life practically in my professional career working for minority business enterprises. I started my career in banking. I started out with the FDIC. I went to work for a small startup minority-owned bank, African-American-owned bank out of Atlanta, a suburb of Atlanta, First Southern Bank, which was acquired by Citizens Trust Bank. Worked there for about 4 years. I see some head nodding. You know about them, right? Yeah. Jim Young was my boss and my mentor at that time. But that's where I really got indoctrinated and baptized into the whole minority enterprise development and entrepreneurship business, if you will. What I saw working at that bank were small business owners that came in, a lot of them women business owners who needed bank loans. And as the chairman mentioned, the struggle, and it's still the number one impediment for minority-owned businesses, but especially women-owned businesses, is access to capital. I, before leaving the bank, became a small business loan lender in my role there as branch manager. But I constantly got to see where MBEs are constantly challenged with accessing capital. And so throughout my career and having the experience in working with banks, shortly after leaving First Southern and getting the introduction to not only minority franchise owners and construction owners and the Barranco automotive owners, et cetera, that really gave me this platform of who do I want, what's my calling in life? And where do I want to spend my time? I want to spend my time ideally creating fair and equitable opportunities for MBEs, and not only in the contracting space, but also access to capital and finding alternative sources of capital. So what we're going to do today is share with you breadth and depth of opportunities, some experiences that the business owners here have had. Dr. Malveaux is going to moderate the panel, but I will delve in because what we do as an agency at MBDA is facilitate access to capital and alternative sources of capital. We'll talk about some of the partnerships that we've developed across America. As the presenter from Bank of America stated, with CDFIs as an alternative source. We've got online lending sources. We've got venture capitalists that we've partnered with. We've got traditional banks, as well as a couple of new programs that I'd like to talk with you about as we go into the panel. We have pushed hard to influence policy. One of our notable actions that we've taken at this time is we're getting ready, we're partnering with the National Association of Investment Companies, which is the preeminent organization for diverse emerging managers. You just heard the chairman talk about the inequities in that space. Well, we will be launching a white paper to help influence policy as we move forward so that we have a stance and something in hand that we can speak from with the data that helps us to clearly illuminate where the disparities are. When you look at and you start to peel back the layers, as he mentioned, and you look at, who's spending the money, and why is it that the pension funds only have 2% of its portfolio of investors that are made up of diverse entities that look like people of color. And that's going to permeate not only organizations across America on the access to capital front, but it's going to continue to impact the way we do business as a nation and our competitiveness globally. Because when you begin to peel back supply chains, you've probably seen some of this happening with companies like Walmart and others. People want to know, if we're spending our money with you, then does your supply chain look like us? Where's the wealth being created, and what does that supply chain look like? And when it doesn't look fair and equitable, that's going to be a problem more and more. And global competition is going to start to squeeze the bottom line market share for that reason for our companies. And that's going to impact and have a ripple effect on our financial markets. That's going to impact access to capital for us. It's just a ripple effect. It's not like this is here, that sits there, and it doesn't all correlate and come together. So we'll talk more about that. I wanted to mention the white paper that we're going to be coming out with on diverse emerging managers, addressing that very issue. We're getting ready to launch 2 access to capital hubs across America. One of them is going to be focused on alternative lending sources for MBEs. I have some handouts that you should have received. If you didn't, GROW is what it looks like. You have a listing of our business centers here for those of you that are not in the DC area across America. We'll talk some more about that, but we're also launching a micro enterprise lending program that's going to be kicking off this fall as well to address some of these access to capital needs that are in our community. So with that, I encourage you to be engaged. We also will talk, but it would be nice to hear from you, the audience, so that we can hear what your concerns are and how we can address some of what you'd like to take away today. And it may be that others may have some of the same questions that you have, so please don't be shy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, enough of me up here. I am now going to introduce to you Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who's long been recognized for her progressive and insightful observations. How many of you were at the town hall this morning? Did you hear Dr. Malveaux? She did great. Give it up for her. She's great. She's in every space, right? I just love that you could do so many things, but you choose to use your expertise in this way to talk about the ways in which economic opportunity, hinder the realities of economic opportunity for our community. And so you'll see her in all kinds of different spaces. So I don't want to belabor you with her long, extensive bio, however great it is. She is the former president of Bennett College, but a renowned voice of leadership for our community in all spaces. So please, without further ado, give it up for our moderator, Dr. Julianne Malveaux.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
First of all, Brenda, thank you so much for the work you did to put this panel together. We had a dynamic introductory call a week or so ago and had the opportunity to get to know each other a little bit. But the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation does tremendous work in bringing us together every year, allowing us the opportunity to exchange ideas, to do the kind of networking, hopefully the networking that we all need to do, and to make the kind of connections to advance the status of our people. We just don't come here to hang out. We come here to advance the status of our people. And there are many ways for us to do that, but certainly entrepreneurship has been one that we have ignored at parts of the civil rights struggle. I won't say always, but in parts of the civil rights struggle. Our focus in the 50s had been access to education. And that was important because we had so much segregation in education. But in accessing education, we often forgot about entrepreneurship. And so we did not put the same kind of emphasis in looking at banking institutions, in looking at discretionary lending, in looking at redlining, and looking at the way that African Americans had differential access to home ownership. And in failing to do that, and hindsight, of course, is 20/20, but in failing to do that, we now have a lot of catch up to play. As we've listened to our sister who leads over at the Minority Business Development Agency, Congresswoman Clark also shared the data about the number of African American women-owned businesses, the fact that we're nearly half of all African American-owned businesses, and 1 in 7 of women-owned businesses. But this is unfortunately what hasn't been shared. Too many of our businesses are what I call bidnesses. B-I-D-N-E-S-S. In other words, nearly 90% of black-owned businesses are sole proprietorships. You know, it's not mama and them, it's just mama. Too many of our businesses are what I call lifestyle businesses. In other words, it's your business, and when you're gone, that's all there's gonna be. Because you have a lot of folks who have gone into business because they lost their job. And so they went down to Kinko's and got one of those pieces of paper, you know, you cut up in 4s or 8s, maybe, and that's your business card. You know, and then you pass those out. You change your mind. I think I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do something else. So then you get some more cards. Now, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just trying to be real. Because basically, we want to talk about how business can be an economic driver in our community. Because if we look at the numbers in terms of what's going on, President Obama got a really big gift, or he set the gift up today or yesterday when the income data came out. Mm-hmm. Finally, we see a 5% increase in income. Mm-hmm. Finally, we see a 1% drop, a 1 percentage point drop, which is really more than a percent, in the poverty level. Mm-hmm. Finally, we are getting to see a number of things that suggest in our economy that individuals who say things like, make America great again, are tripping. And I promised Shawnice and Mena that I would not use profanity today. Thus, the name of the Republican candidate for the presidency will not pass my lips, because that is indeed profanity. But what we do know is that we do have a great country that vastly needs improvement. And part of that improvement must be the full participation of every demographic sector in our economy. Not just in our educational sector, not just in our employment sector, but also in our entrepreneurial sector. Because entrepreneurship is power. Because people have the ability to make the kind of discretionary decisions that can make a difference in the lives of our young men and women. And I love Donovan Peoples. He's done such a wonderful job with his work. But when he said opportunities for young men, I don't know if y'all saw me grab him and say, and women. All of the challenges that are being faced by young men in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality and mass incarceration are hitting our young women as well. We have an 800% increase in the number of African American women who are being incarcerated. But when these sisters come out, they can't get a job as a secretary at a bank unless we own the bank and say, we're not going to make people check the box. And so we have to lift up our entrepreneurs, but we also have to learn from them. And what I liked about the way we conceptualize this session is that I'm not going to introduce these ladies. They're going to introduce themselves. The TED Talk has a construct of tell your story. Tell your story and share your message. And so all of them are accomplished individuals. They're not all entrepreneurs, but they play in the economic development sandbox in one way or another. Either they're lending or they're creating, they're developing or they're connecting. And so their stories are instructive. I want those of you who are entrepreneurs to listen for parallels and for learning opportunities. I want those of you who want to be entrepreneurs to listen to them for the very same reasons and to make a set of questions that if you don't get to ask them today, perhaps they'll be generous enough at the end, and I know they will because they're generous ladies, to share their email addresses so that you can ask them a question via email. I will tell you up front that if you email me, you won't get the answer tomorrow, but you will get it eventually. And I believe that we all share the spirit of mentorship where that kind of thing occurs. And so without further ado, I'm going to ask my sisters to come up in the order that they're seated, really, starting at the very end and coming up to Jan. And ask them to, starting at the very end and coming up to Jan. And you have a choice, but I think you all will probably prefer to come to the mic. I think you'll probably prefer to. You don't have to. Consensus. Y'all want to come to the mic and stay in your seats?
Well, let's test it. Let's see.
Yeah.
We're going to test
Y'all
it.
can, okay, if y'all want to stay in your
Testing.
seats,
Can you
stay.
guys hear us? I think it's more intimate if we can just sit and talk.
All right.
I don't want to.
You know what? I'm small D Democratic some days of the week.
Sorry, Dr. Malvo,
Now,
but
let me
these are
explain
aggressive
something to you.
women.
When I was a president of Bennett College, I was not small D Democratic. I was simply CEO. But in this setting, I believe y'all have it. Let the young lady at the end begin, and we'll each. You each have up to 5 minutes, and if you go past 5 minutes, I will interrupt you in the interest of two things. I want some conversation among us, and I'm really trying to make sure we have at least 20 minutes for the audience to interact with us and to have conversation. We have until 3:30. Let's use our time wisely. So let's begin at the end.
Well, I was all prepared to go last, but actually, as I look at all of the ladies up here, I think maybe it's better that I go first because it would be incredibly humbling to have to go after all of your personal stories. I'm probably the one that sticks out here in that I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm really an advocate, a policy wonk who finds myself working at the largest bank in the country at JPMorgan Chase. My name is Janice Bowdler. I work for the JPMorgan Chase Foundation, and I run our strategy on small business, community development, and financial capability. I'll share a little bit of my story just to give you some context on maybe how I got here and why I care about this issue so much. I grew up in Northeast Ohio in a small town called Ashtabula. Is there anybody in here? Oh, I love my people. Okay. I grew up 3 blocks inside the Ashtabula City School Districts, and so understanding segregation was very intuitive for me because my school was one of the schools that was under state order to change the way that it was funded, knowing that property tax is an incredibly discriminatory way to fund public schools. And 3 blocks the other way where my cousins lived was a state-funded school, and it was in a dramatically different set of conditions. Even though I didn't have the language for it, I grew up instinctively understanding spatial segregation, school segregation, and the segregation of opportunity. Now we know, and all the research tells us, that where you're born in your zip code is one of the biggest determinants of your life outcomes. And that's the thing that drives me every day, is trying to change that. Zip code should not be your destiny. You should be your destiny. I spent 10 years working at the National Council of La Raza, leading their economic policy week, their economic policy work. I'm really excited that Congressional Hispanic Caucus and Congressional Black Caucus conventions are happening at the same time this week, and that we're able to have a conversation, hopefully in this room as well, about what we can accomplish when all of us as women of color work together, because I think it can be incredibly powerful. In our work at the JPMorgan Chase Foundation around small business, I want to share with you a little bit about what we're doing and tee it up as a framework that might help set the stage for what you're going to hear from the real stars of the show, the women who actually run businesses, not just ideas like myself. So we, at the JP Morgan Chase Foundation, all of our work is focused around the idea of inclusive economic growth, and we see this as an imperative. And you all know why. I mean, the changing demographics are clear. If we don't bring our whole communities along, we're not going to survive economically. But inclusive economic growth is getting to be one of those buzzwords that can quickly lose its meaning if we don't talk about the hows and whys that we're going to accomplish that. So there's a number, we invest in workforce, in small business, community development, financial capability, all of those things need to come together. But when it comes, I'm gonna really focus on small business, we're thinking about it in three ways. First, we're thinking about how we create more pathways into high growth incubators and accelerators, those high growth sectors that have, I know you all are going to find this shocking, just have not been very diverse places. But we know that they're working. Those incubators and accelerators out there that are in high growth sectors are producing high growth companies. Let me share with you, there was recently a research report released by Project Diane. Between 2012 and 2014, there were 10,284 companies financed by venture capital. 24 were startups founded by Black women. That is unacceptable. And how do you get financed? I mean, there's a lot of ways. I don't know how many of you might have rich uncles. That's one way. But getting in the door at the incubators and accelerators that are going to connect you to those angel investors that are going to give you the wraparound services is critically important. So that's one. The second way that we're thinking about this are more of our retail businesses, the mom and pops that are in our neighborhoods, that are contributing to neighborhood revitalization, that make our communities the places where we want to live and work. And we're taking that idea of the entrepreneurial ecosystem that was so effective at supporting high growth businesses and taking it to the neighborhoods. This is critically important, and I want to stop here because a lot of times when we think about how we support small businesses, and in particular entrepreneurs of color, we can get pigeonholed in the bakers and makers space. A lot of us are bakers and makers. That's critically important. We need a strategy. We need to make sure that we are supporting those businesses. But you know what? We're also scientists and technologists and engineers, and we need to be in the high growth space as well. So we're taking a both and approach. And then finally, and critically important for this conversation around flexible access to capital, I want to share with you two things that we've done in the last year. One is with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, seed an Entrepreneurs of Color Fund in the city of Detroit, specifically to support the entrepreneurs of color in that city that are the backbone of the revitalization of Detroit. Tasha,
that's 5 minutes.
Oh, that's 5 minutes. Okay. Let me say, I was going to have, wait, Tasha, wave your hand. Okay, City of Detroit, big shout out for Detroit. I will wrap by saying, I will wrap up by saying that this is critically important, not just because we're building the assets of our communities, but as Dr. Malvo already said, our businesses hire our neighbors. We're going to have a new report coming out on this, but if we want, we can make a huge dent in the unemployment in our communities if we focus on growing minority-owned small businesses. I'll stop.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janelle Ross, and I'm from Dayton, Ohio, and I'm a second-generation automobile dealer. My story is going to be a little different. I had the rare opportunity to grow up in an automobile family where my father started as an auto dealer over 42 years ago. He had the opportunity to be in General Motors' first minority dealer development class in 1972, which at that time, GM took the lead on wanting to bring more African-American males at that point into the dealership ownership opportunity. At the present, we have 5 franchises that we represent. We've had Buick for 42 years, Mercedes-Benz for 37 years, GMC 34 years, and our newest additions are Alfa Romeo and Fiat for the last 5 years. My father, passed away at an early age of 62, and at that time I was 27 years old, and that's when I assumed the day-to-day operations of our business, and that was over 19 years ago. So, through the course of this time, there's obviously been a lot of obstacles that we've witnessed and gone through within the auto industry. But with the passing of my father and my mother stepping up and taking over as president, and with as president of our organization, and the assistance of our manufacturer partners, with primarily General Motors, with offering programs like the Minority Dealer Development as well as the Women's Retail Network, to help gain me the knowledge and skills that I needed to become a successful dealer, are some of the ways and access that in our industry that we need to utilize to get more of you involved in our industry from a retail perspective. And whenever I speak, I do say the word dealer, which I have come to know. Everyone has their ideologies in their own and acronyms. And I didn't realize till I got to college that, that was a little negative connotation of just saying dealer. And when you're driving different cars, they're like, so your dad's a dealer? I was like, yeah. But for today, we're just going to say we're dealer and understand that we're speaking in an automotive perspective. So it always gets a little joke on that.
That's funny.
I assumed the presidency of our organization 6 years ago when my mother lost her battle with breast cancer. And so now I have the opportunity to continue the legacy that they have truly created within our community as well as our region and across this nation in regards to the automobile industry. I take what I do very seriously because I am the only second-generation African-American female automobile dealer in the country, which we need more. And I am the only African-American female that represents the brands that we have. So we've had some discussion already today on ways that we need to continue working on bringing more young minority women into the retail side of our business. We do a very good job on the corporate manufacturer side, but that's really my charge and something that I really want to spend my time on, of bringing more me's into this world. So I say all that to say that I'm very proud of what my parents have accomplished, and I know in the last 19 years I've continued to do some of their good work, but I will be remiss if I did not say I have very large boots, not necessarily shoes to fill, but I will keep doing what I can to represent the brands and the manufacturers as well as the thousands of consumers that rely on us for their automotive needs in the Centerville, Ohio market.
Before Tammy starts, I just want to offer Janelle special congratulations. During the economic downturn, we lost literally half of our African-American-owned auto dealers. We lost half of them. Donovan and others have talked about the wealth that we lost, but we literally lost a huge footprint. If you ever look at the BE 100 and look at the top companies, and you'll see ACT1 is one of those top companies, but what you will see is that many of them are auto dealerships. So we lost a wealth opportunity that we should not have lost, and why I do not tend to be but so critical. Well, let me just say this: we bailed out Detroit, but we didn't bail out Detroit. We bailed out Detroit automobile manufacturers. We did not bail out the city of Detroit, and we certainly did not bail out those black auto dealers. Overall, we lost about 20% of our auto dealers, but we lost fully half of the black ones. And so this sister deserves another round of applause for being able to sustain that. Tammy?
Wow, you're a tough act to follow, so let me try to untwist myself here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tammy Jones, and I am the founder and president of Basis Investment Group. And Basis Investment Group is a commercial real estate investment platform. We're headquartered in New York City, and I founded the company in 2009. I'm going to take you back a little bit in my history to tell you my story. So my story begins like this. I was born in South Jamaica, Queens, so New York City is my city. So New Yorkers out there, holler. In a two-bedroom apartment with 8 people. My dad made $8,000 a year, and he died on Father's Day a few months after I'd gotten accepted to Cornell University. So when I am here to tell you that adversity strengthens you, I go through my story, hopefully you will hear that theme. My family, because we were a very close family, pushed me to go to Cornell. I didn't want to go to Cornell. I didn't want to leave my mother. My father had just died, and I was accepted to some pre-freshman program to go, get to know some of the other African Americans. And so I went. And it was the first time I was ever away from home. Thank God I went, because I had a tremendous experience, graduated with an economics degree at the top of my class, but I also got pregnant and had a child at 19. So I was connecting with Don on, my son, who has now become my peer. I graduated in 4 years on time, walked down the aisle with my son across, with me, with my cap on his head. And I also got married. And I was with my high school sweetheart, so it wasn't that scandalous. And, just saying. And so, we wanted to start our family young, and we did. And I got a tremendous job at Equitable Life, so started in the institutions with this financial management training program. And, the Equitable Enterprises owned an investment bank and the life company, and also a commercial real estate subsidiary in Atlanta. And I wanted to just experience and do it all. So I, decided to rotate into the commercial real estate subsidiary. So my husband and my child and I moved to Atlanta, and 3 months later, he was killed in a car accident. So I say that to say, adversity strengthens you, right? When you experience that, there's something in here that makes you just, know what you have and to move you forward. And I obviously had my small son, who was my motivator. I had a great career at Equitable Real Estate. Family supported me in raising my son, made it through the ranks and got up to vice president. Then I went to work for GMAC Commercial Mortgage, and made it to senior VP. And then I went to work for the Case Depot, a commercial real estate subsidiary called CW Capital, where I actually ran the lending platform. And in that position, we did about $6 billion in transactions. I had 80 people working for me. So at this point, I was, running a business, but I wasn't an owner of a business. And I think that was the critical thing we've said. So the downturn hits, and I'm going to try to make it quick so I don't get cut off. And the downturn hits, and at that point, it was, if not now, when, right? I watched other folks make money in Challenge. I had experienced something that was even more horrific in my life, so I couldn't have any fear at this point. And I remember distinctly, I was reading Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, and there was a quote that just really made me, you have to say, what was your aha moment? It was, the only thing that'll prevent you from achieving your dream is the fear of failure. And I had faced some of my worst nightmares, so I knew that I had to do this. So I found a basis. Because I was in New York City and I dealt with a lot of the high net worth owners in real estate, of real estate across the U.S. as well as in New York City, I knew who had capital. And so I found my first investor, who was a family office and owner of about 8 million square feet in North America. And I got my first $100 million. And just to roll the clock forward, Basis has closed $2.5 billion, 264 deals in 44 states. And I'm told I'm the only minority and women-owned commercial real estate debt investment platform in the United States, which, like you, is really sad and incredible. And I'm raising capital every day, just like Don said. I definitely feel his pain. And I'm actually raising capital and trying to navigate through some of the pension fund stuff. So it'll be interesting to get into that dialogue about access to capital. So, for me, it's been a journey that each position prepared me for the next role. What I did at Equitable prepared me for what I did, at GMAC. Running a platform at CW Capital gave me the expertise, because you have to know how to run a business, folks. You can't. It's not about just being able to say I can do deals. You have to understand the operational stuff, and that's my story. I'm going to stop.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies. It's an absolute honor to be able to share space with you today.
Can you talk into the mic, please?
Appreciate your the candor in your stories.
Yeah, talk into the mic if you would. Yeah, great.
Can you guys hear me now?
Better, much better.
All right. Okay. My name is Aisha Bowe, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of STEMboard. 6 years ago, I was an aerospace engineer at NASA Ames Research Center in Silicon Valley. And in that capacity, one of my job roles was to review proposals as part of the Small Business Innovative Research Fund. And so these were businesses that were looking to bring their technology and their capabilities into the government. It was a pathway for innovation. And every time I reviewed a proposal, I found that the number of women and minorities who were accessing this opportunity were less than I'd like. Well, a couple of years pass, and I'm in Silicon Valley, so I can't go to the coffee shop or even park my car without someone telling me about their business idea and what they want to do. And I decided, what, why not me? And as Tammy said, if not now, when? Well, I got together with my co-founder, and we went to the Valley to raise capital because, you see, at this time, I never thought of the government as a way to finance my business. And I went after what would amount to a little less than 1 year's worth of salary, and I was told no. And we're talking about, I've already been published, I've got 6 years as an engineer, I have an accomplished team of people who have a track record of success. And we could not raise $100,000. And so my business partner said to me, Aisha, we're managing $250+ million programs in the government as civil servants. Why don't we start bidding on government work? And that's what we did. And so as a woman, minority with the majority control of my firm, of which many of you are in this room, I went after a women-owned small business certification from the United States Women's Chamber of Commerce. I'll say that again, United States Women's Chamber of Commerce. And with that certificate, we were eligible for an incubator program called the Mentor Protege Program. And we went after a Mentor Protege within the Department of Defense. And since then, it has been an absolute life-changing situation because we are sustainable, we are profitable, we've taken zero outside investment. We have over a $30 million backlog in work for the company today. And I do not have a board. Now, the bonus of this is we take this money and we've invested it in minority institutions. Last year, we did a pilot program with Fayetteville State, which is an HBCU, the only one with the Center of Defense and Homeland Security, because we are a DoD mentor protege company, one of 66 in the entire United States of America. And all of the students who worked with us got their tuition paid for the year. They also were able to learn relevant skills that they can use to get jobs. They developed 2 algorithms and published a paper, all in 1 year. We also host science and technology camps that, quite frankly, are more than just exposure. We give them hardware. And that's one of the exciting pieces because we were able to say, what did I need as a minority engineer working in the government that I did not have? How do I create more of me? Because I was the only one for 6 years. I was the only African-American aerospace engineer NASA had at that center out of the 1,200 civil servants, and that cannot stand. And I said, you mean to tell me you could not find one black person in the United States of America that was qualified to do this job? I know some. Why don't you let me go hire some? But there was always a reason why not. And so for me and for my company, yes, we enjoy delivering both commercial products and technology products to the government and our large sector clients, but we are also committed to closing the achievement gap by doing things like building what I have on my table here today, which is the first piece of custom hardware that is going to be used by 5 inroad sites next year. Every single one of their students are going to get this. They're going to have a virtual platform and they'll be able to expand. Because if we don't work together to educate our communities, who will?
Thank you so much.
Aisha. Woo! Yeah. Oh, that's exciting for me. All of these ladies are exciting. Good afternoon. I'm Janice Bryant Halroyd. I'm the founder and CEO of the Act One Group, and I am truly blessed to be one of 11 children to John and Elretha Bryant. Therein is my story, the beginning and the end of it. We were born in North Carolina, Tarboro, North Carolina. Most of you are too young to remember Hurricane Floyd with any relevance, but that was the storm that really washed out a whole African-American community, a town of Princeville. It sits right adjacent to us, and we consider ourselves cousins. And I learned a lot about my business when that storm occurred, and I learned a lot about finance when that storm occurred. I also learned a lot about how the government can have responsibility and can present opportunity to us. You see, home ownership is one of the first levels of business and finance that many of us ever experience. And I will say that too few of us are even doing that today. When Floyd wiped out homes in North Carolina, I happened to be at a Congressional Black Caucus event. And I got tickets from G.K. Butterfield to go to the gala that night. And my brother Carlton, who's sitting right here with me, we were at the table and someone came over to escort us up to see the president. And I'm old school. I said, I'm from Tarboro, North Carolina. I ain't going with nobody I don't know. And he said I was the only one who could go with him, and I'm saying, no, I'm not leaving. Well, it so happens Bill Clinton wanted to speak with me because I had rushed. I didn't know that I couldn't rush a meeting. I just knew that my sister Linda was on the roof of her house saying she was going to kill her husband Larry if he didn't get off that boat saving other people and come get her. And she called me in D.C. and asked me if I would pray with her because she didn't want to call mom and scare mom and let mom know that she died a Christian. And when Rod Slater, who was then Secretary of Treasury, asked me to share my story, an African American, asked me to share my story with Bill Clinton, the next morning Bill Clinton was in Tarboro, North Carolina, telling my mother, your daughter sure does love this town, and we're going to make sure that everybody who is a homeowner and wants to be a homeowner will continue to be one, and he kept his word. Now, I'm not campaigning. Don't hear me to be campaigning for any political official running right now.
You can if you want to.
You said we can't curse.
You can if you want to.
You said we can't curse.
Oh, also, don't mention that.
Let me hurry up. Let me get my 5 minutes. Let me hurry up. Well, you know. So if you're with her, great. But I was talking about her. What were you thinking? In any event, how does this tie to finance? I'm in a room with several sheroes, of whom you've just heard from one. Laura Richardson was introduced earlier. I'm blessed to have her be a part of my team. And Susan Taylor, who I learned so much about myself and who I could be through her many years at Essence, and continue to honor the work she does with National Cares Mentoring, creating our future entrepreneurs. My mother and Madam C.J. Walker are my OG heroes. And I'm sitting up here feeling like an OG because I'm going to say something to you right now. I got a new hero, a shero today. My aide, Shari Mercer, sent me a hot link. And it was a hot link to a lady who was going off in a dollar store. Have y'all seen it?
Oh, I haven't seen this.
Now, we can't curse, so I cannot tell you the content of her conversation, but she made a point to the person in the store. She said, until I talk like this, she said it much more real, y'all, okay? Think Medea. She said, until I talk like this, you don't hear me. But you want to clown my sons who are beautifully dressed in their natural cultural garments and ask them if they're trick-or-treating.
Oh.
And you need to learn to honor the cash that ensures you have a check. Because you're in the middle of a black neighborhood selling goods, and then she described the store, but I can't curse.
Well,
I learned a lot from her about the next phase of my business because I operate a $3 billion organization in 19 countries. And I have meetings with people all over the world. And I get when people see me coming. When I started my business over 35 years ago, I never even considered asking for any investment into my company. I called my mama and borrowed $900. She said, I'll match what you have, but mama did me a favor and beat what I had. And I ended up with a $1,500 startup. And there have been many tears and years and fears between over 35 years ago and $3 billion today, and we're still growing. But I'll tell you something, that lady said something. She said, you need to honor the cash that is paying your check. She reframed for me how I think about when we go out, whether we're looking for contracting opportunities, funding, or whatever. Nobody's doing anything for free, so you are a customer, and you need to learn to think as a customer when you're thinking about borrowing. You are a customer, and you need to understand that you can have customer service. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking today, not talking about anything I plan to, and I'm thinking today.
So you got 2
some of
minutes.
you- I'm gonna do this then, Southern, and I'll still do it. My daddy, some of you have heard me say this before. My daddy was a very strong leader in our family. And I always wanted to be pretty, but I was the one they called smart. I hated being smart. You know, all my sisters are pretty. Back in the day, pretty was light skin and long hair, and I ain't had none of that. And Daddy would scoop me up when people would talk about my sisters and say, but look at Janice, she's so smart. And I would just cringe inside. So I decided that I was going to be a bad student for a season. And I brought home my report card. Y'all remember those? And Daddy got very upset because he said, with 11 children, y'all are going to need some scholarships to go to college. And I said, Daddy, I ain't even got all the pages in the book. And my daddy taught me a lesson. He said, listen, read the pages you have and you're smart enough to figure out what's missing. And hold on. And then Daddy and Mama said, and since you're so smart, Missy, write what's missing, tape it in, and leave it for the next student who comes along. Now, so I had to write books, right? But my daddy was a judicious, and he was also an honorable man. And he allowed me this. I was sitting up here and I was thinking, the only time my daddy ever allowed me to dispute something he has said and get away with it was when I was right. Because I said, Daddy, what if this had been a math book and the pages were missing? And you can't jump from addition to geometry. You can't jump from subtraction to trigonometry. You gotta have the pages. And so my message is to you today is simply a revisit of my life. Yes, there have been many opportunities I would have enjoyed. Candidly speaking, I'd have loved the opportunity or the confidence to be okay with being smart. But as a business person, I've come to appreciate the composite need all of us have to really reach our best opportunities. And I would remind you that regardless of who's signing your check, you are writing it. You don't have to be a financial genius. You hire them. I've got one here, my brother Carlton. We keep it in the family, y'all. But in my last 30 seconds, I do want to share with you this. Listen really carefully, because this is exactly what that sister, I hope somebody shares with you, the HTTP, the link to look at her, because she needs to be in classrooms. They need to be studying her and teaching her. She says a whole lot in that moment. Let me close it up. Here's how my sister said it to me when she first went away to North Carolina A&T State University. And I felt like the house, and
Y'all stop that noise.
I felt like the house, come on, Bennett. And I felt like the house was empty with still 12 people left there, a cat and a dog and a neighbor. But here's what she wrote to me. And it's a poem by an unknown poet, and I'm not going to do all of it, but he's saying the exact same thing that this sister is cussing somebody else who won't hear her until she has to get there. Actually, she should be Hillary's surrogate debater for Donald Trump, okay?
You cussed. Yeah,
I did. Surrogate debater. But here's the way my sister said it, the way our parents would allow us. My love is of a birth is rare, as are far objects strange and high. 'Twas begotten by despair, upon impossibility, magnanimous despair alone could show me so divine a thing where feeble hope could ne'er have flown, but vainly flapped its tinselled wings. For fate with jealous eyes doth see two perfect loves, nor lets them close. Their union would his ruin be, and her tyrannic power dispose. Folks, therefore, the love which us doth bind And fate would enviously debar is the conjunction of our minds in cooperation with the stars. God bless you.
Wow. Okay, only because this sister has the largest company out there, only because she bad, and only because we have that little North Carolina connect. See, only because of that, the rest of y'all, I let her have an extra minute or so. And only because she recognized, see, I didn't see you, Susan. I saw Kefra. I kept looking, but you know I can't see. So I didn't see Susan Taylor out there. And stand up, Sue, because we just got to give you some love. Who cares for our people the way we need to care for ourselves, cares for us even when we don't care for us. So only because of all that, Ms. J, I gave you a couple extra minutes.
Thank you,
but
ma'am.
only because.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to ask your assistant to hand us that link because I'm going to announce it before we're done.
Oh, thank you.
So I know because I want to see this.
We need that in the business schools.
This
Y'all, we need that link in the business schools. They need to be teaching from it. People should not be forced to have to get profane in order to be profound.
There you go. Now what I'm going to do, because we must hear, the biggest feedback we get from CBC is that we don't engage our audiences enough. So we must do that. So what I'm going to ask my panelists to do, and I think I teed you up on this on our call, just take a minute, if you would, to give yourself, all of you are phenomenally successful at what you do. You're not all entrepreneurs, but you're all entrepreneurs except for our sister down here who's the policy wonk. But in any case, what would you tell your younger self about the work that you're doing now? What piece of advice would you give you at 25 or 30? What do you wish you knew? Start at the end. And the rest of y'all start lining up if you have questions or comments. Mena, where do they line up? Thank you.
So I had the great pleasure of interviewing Beverly Johnson for a forum on African American entrepreneurship. And she said something really incredible that resonates with what you were saying, Janice. And she talks about when she started her business that she never realized how smart she was until she started actually doing it. And that conversation between us was several months ago now. I actually just saw her again yesterday. I reminded her of that. I think about that nearly every day. And if I could look in the mirror at my 22-year-old self, that's what I would say. You're much smarter than you think you are. Just go out and get started and do it. Believe in yourself.
Janelle.
Yes. A couple things. One thing is we can't get into, I would have taken my education one step further, but due to the limitations in time that I was faced with my dad's untimely passing, that's something that I still haven't completed today is my MBA. So I'm always of the advocacy of education, of the more you learn, the better you are, because no one can take your knowledge away at any time, cost, or from that standpoint. So that's one thing for me, for my younger self, that I would have completed, regardless of circumstance, education, because I still feel that it would help me even greater today.
Aisha?
Oh, I'm going to get there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tammy. I told you I can't see.
No, it's fine. So what I would tell my younger self, I think create community and to work on networking in a different way. As women and minorities, and particularly as women I'll speak from, we tend to be social networkers. And we need to do that more from a business perspective. So in my business, it's commercial real estate, and it's all about relationships. And so I would tell my younger self to focus on, creating community and working on developing a business network. I would also say, marry your vision with your passion. And I'm so excited that I've finally been able to do that, because through my founding of Basis, I've hired 71% women and minorities, and I'm very proud of that. And we've also loaned or invested $500 million with women and minorities all throughout the United States in buying real estate. So that's the kind of stuff, thank you, that we need to do to change the playing field. And it was me realizing that I had a skill as an emerging manager myself. I'm loaning and investing with other emerging managers because I care about them. So.
Well, I would tell my younger self, Even younger self. Yeah, I'm older than I look. But do not allow others to define what's possible for you. My high school guidance counselor told me that I should be a cosmetologist. After finishing my second degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Michigan, I decided to send her a little copy of that because those people are wrong. And as an African-American female, I cannot tell you how many times people tell me, well, you can't, you shouldn't, I don't think so, it's unlikely. And I have. So not all feedback is constructive, and sometimes you just need to keep it moving.
Aisha, she just said that because you're so pretty. And she couldn't think bigger. What would I tell myself? Self? Why y'all laughing at me? I'm telling you the truth. Okay? Listen very carefully. Okay? I guess you can't laugh if you can't relate, right? I'd say self. Take care of your family. Because no matter where you go or how far you reach, family is where you truly are yourself. Never compromise who you are personally to become who you wish to be professionally. And live in gratitude. Don't wait for success. Be success. And if you're looking for a blessing, the best way to receive one is to be one.
Thank you.
Okay, as Joanne Hill has listened, if you want to ask a question, there's a line is right there, and I'm going to come to that in just a sec. So if you do have a question, Minna is there, so she's going to manage that line for us. But I asked Joanne, because she's sitting here with this report, I want to snatch it from her. It's the Minority Business Development Agency's annual report. And folks who know me, Susan and Keffer, know I get off on numbers. I'll be playing with this tonight instead of going to a party. But in any case, having listened to the ladies, Joanne, would you just sort of, just as you started us off, I won't say wrap us up, but give us some nuggets from the work that you've done that sort of feed into the stories and the narratives that you've heard.
So,
Here, no, you can't have mine.
So a couple of things that I think are notable in listening to these very successful women business owners here. Under this administration, and I have to make this plug, under the Obama administration, the Minority Business Development Agency has generated more than $30 billion for minority business owners. We've also helped to create and retain more than 100,000 jobs for minority business owners. And I wanted to say that because it feeds into the point that you were making earlier about the story that's not being told about how this economy has grown and sprung back under the leadership of President Obama. So what we do as an agency that feeds into what the ladies have shared here is we facilitate access to contracts, access to market opportunities, global market opportunities, and access to capital. The contracts that we facilitate with regard to the federal contracting, we work very closely with GSA, SBA, DOD, God bless her, our dear friend Tracy Penson, who was at DOD, did an outstanding job with that small business program at DOD. They have probably the most commendable program in that regard. But we help facilitate access to these contract opportunities through our nationwide network of business centers. That blue sheet that I passed out earlier has the listing of our business centers on it. We do everything from helping companies that are looking to access corporate partnerships with Fortune 500 corporations, with facilitating introductions. We facilitate putting together very sophisticated
Step up to our great. I was finding the link for her.
thought my time was up. So we help facilitate and put together the actual contracting packages. We've worked with companies such as my dear friend who's sitting next to me, to work on deals that are ranging anywhere from $100,000, $1 million plus to, $500 million. So our services run the gamut. For those of you that are smaller business owners, as you heard the point that was made earlier, in that 80 to 85% that are $100,000 or less per year, we have partners that we collaborate with to help those companies as well. Another shout out I have to make where we're continuing to promote what we do and how we help in our communities is, again, I have to harp on our Essence friend. We just partnered with Essence with the Entrepreneurial Village that was launched this year in New Orleans during the Essence Festival to bring about not only the beauty, but also now the entrepreneurship, the economic aspect of what we need to be educating business owners in our community about. So now it's about an economic imperative. And so we're going to continue to do that as we continue to partner with Essence, not only here domestically, but as well as globally. You're going to be doing an event over in South Africa, Durban, in November. We're looking forward to that. Through doing business globally, we work very closely with the International Trade Administration and the U.S. Export Assistance Centers at Commerce. We are one of the best kept secrets. I'm tired of hearing that as an agency. I've been with MBDA now for 16 years. So nobody in this room can say they don't know who MBDA is after today, right? Right. So I have business cards, our website. I'm going to ask that we post the deck that I wanted to share today, but it was just a lot with the panel, the number of panelists that we have. But we will have that for posting on the CBC website following today. But if you're looking to do business domestically, internationally, accessing contracts, whether they be public or private sector, accessing capital on multiple platforms, whether it's a loan, a small business loan, we've got the micro lending program that will go up to about $50,000. We also have loans where we generate deals up to $1 million plus.
Thank you very much. So that's a lot of good information. Make sure you stay connected. We will have some information on the CBCF website. So questions now.
Hello? Can you?
Hello.
Okay. First, thank you very much for sharing with us today. My name is Tanya Nebo. I'm a commercial and real estate attorney, business and real estate attorney, and I help my clients buy, sell, and operate small businesses. And what I have found is the major challenge is what Dr. Malveaux alluded to earlier, and that is scaling. So hearing you all go from startup to X billions of dollars, or from $1,500 to where you are, do you all have any suggestions on how to scale? Well, how do you go from A to much further along down the line?
I can take it from, in the commercial real estate industry, and I guess you're in my industry, I mean, for us, it was about building a track record. So trying to raise capital and do deals to be able to create a reputation in the space. Can you guys hear me okay? And one of the things I do think is important is, scaling is certainly key, but we have to figure out how to create multi-generational wealth. And I was so happy that Janelle, you're a living example of that. I hope that my children will take over my company Basis at some point, because when we think about the statistics, and I want to focus on the positive, which is the growth, but I also want to talk about the fact that the net worth of African Americans is 10 times less than white Americans. And it's going to take us 200 years to catch up. And Dr. Malveaux can check me on the statistics. But if we don't figure out a way, when I said create community before, if we don't figure out a way to take our $1 trillion and use our buying power to invest in deals together, Don Peebles and I, have done deals in similar size deals, and we are actually focusing on raising a tranche of capital called Colorful Capital, where we can actually provide access to institutional quality real estate. I mean, we have to come together because there is a problem. If I've done $2.5 billion, and I'm not bragging on this, in 264 deals, and I'm still having a problem raising institutional capital, there's a problem. And we have to be bigger, faster, stronger to get that money. And so we have to figure out how to come together. So Scaling is important, build your track record, but also partner with each other. We can take it down together. We don't have, it's not crabs in a barrel. We got to work together. So that would be how I would say scale.
Yeah, just we support a lot of programs all across the country, and there's a couple things that I would recommend just based on what we've seen.
President Obama's appointed ambassador, and I learned some incredible things. I learned that Sweden has the largest percentage per capita of startups in the world. Why? Because they can. They support their students from very young age, doing exactly as a government what Susan is doing with National Cares mentoring, but they do it as a policy process. Most of the people over 35 don't remember what it's like not to have had iPads, full health care, and all of this provided for them. And I looked at our nation and I thought, we're the richest, strongest nation on earth, and these people over here are teaching us that they really are the tomorrow country. Now, they'll face some different decisions that they'll have to make as people learn more about them and integrate into that society. They have been a very Swedish society, ethnically as well. When I saw that, I thought to myself, one of my favorite songs in the world is Imagine. John Lennon wrote it, but when you hear Randy Crawford sing it, you live it. And I thought, if we really could just reset expectation for who we are and who our young folks see they can be, just imagine what that would mean for all of us. And I played that song over and over again on my flight back home. I really think we have to reinvent how we look at ourselves. We've become so media, and thank you that the media is appreciating the impact the media can make, because we're becoming so media driven that we compare our success in our appearance and our achievements based on things that when I was growing up we would call failures. And I'm not saying my mom's principles were better. I am saying that we are people who really have to reinvent and reimagine who we are, and we've got to start it at that very, very young age. We really got to do that. There's a book I insist my son insisted he read, because he will be the next head of our company, and he's heading one of our brands now. And it talks about how the Jewish community considers it a sin not to support or invest in each other, and about how they had private lending going on because they couldn't go and create financial entities and grow outside of their disparate past without doing that. We don't even know each other. You're standing up here and we don't even know you. We don't know each other. We've got to reimagine who we are, and we've got to utilize the technology we have to talk about ourselves and express who we are. We got to remember that Prince won't have wrong when he said you can own your own name and your brand, and you can use the internet for good, not just to be up there. Well, I mean, I still want that sister to be in this class, but.
One more of you, not all of you, but one more, please. Tammy, you want to go? Who wanted? Well, you can both go.
I'm hop in on the last.
I'm time sensitive.
Because I want to go back because I think that's so important. Yes, the killings were horrendous, right? I wanted to hop in on the last point because I wanted to just kind of dig in on that a little bit. Yes, the killings and what's happening, they're horrendous. Now, when I remember reading about the 60s and I see what's happening today, the only difference I see is that the pictures are in color and people have phones. So my question is, what do we do as a community to work long-term, strategically together to make sure that we have representation in all areas where it matters? And when I sit here and I tell you about educating the community, this is the covenant that I have made between my company and the Black community, because I do not have a board. So when I take $200,000 because I want to develop a product that is specifically to educate minority groups, who's going to tell me no? When I hire a company that's 80% Black, what are you going to tell me? That's my money. I'm putting our money up to make a difference in the same way that all the women on this board are and everybody in the audience can. And that is what I hope comes out of the Congressional Black Caucus and these sort of meetings, is really for us to sit down and say, we have the disposable income, we have the power, we have the influence, but we need to work together, right? We need to know who each other are. We need to create this community, and we need to be deliberate and persistent about getting to the outcomes that we want to see achieved.
Thank you. Tammy, can you go quickly, or?
No, they've said it.
Okay. I'm going to ask, I'm grateful to our brother from One United Bank, and you did not say your name, so as Janet said, we don't know each other. You told us all your business, but you did not tell us your name. And don't say nothing but your name, and then sit down.
It's Ralph Mindy Henderson.
Great, Ralph. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the rest of you to focus your questions on access to capital, since this is really the reason that we came together. So to the next sister.
But we're doing loans. We're doing loans. So if anybody needs capital.
Okay.
And private equity.
Okay, so you got another sentence in there on the loans, but we knew you had loans because you were a bank. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany Vincent, and I am from Lawrenceville, Virginia. It's a small town in Virginia, Brunswick County. And my question, I had a question on sexism with women, but because we're focusing in on the money aspect, my question would be,
They're the same thing sometimes.
Yeah, and it really is. And that's my issue. It is the same thing. I'm in a small town, and I get hit with the sexism all the time. I know we're on the Black Lives Matter kick, and that is very important. But a lot of women are losing their lives, still alive, because our black men are pulling us down because of sexism. I work in I'm a waitress at a small, and a manager at a small restaurant, and I run into sexism with the only black man there. You would think I would get it from the Arabs, but I run into it with the only black man there.
Access to capital, sister,
yes,
please.
Access to capital. My question would be, how would you encourage women who live in a small town, who do not get the support of their bigger businesses or their peers, to raise money to start small businesses or even just little events to support their county? That's my question.
Thank you. Who wants to take that?
MBDA is a first. Yeah.
I would say that for a small startup company of that magnitude in a small town, I would connect with the closest small business development center. They have them in every state. I'm happy to leave my card with you and connect you there. But for what you're doing, you would want to do either a micro loan or a small startup loan. Okay? But it's got to make sense, to your point. And we can talk more about that offline with regard to the basic stuff you need to have to make that happen. Okay?
Next, please.
Hello, my name is Hope Lavelle. I hail from Detroit, Michigan. Woo! So I am a business owner. I have assisted livings and adult day programs. I don't like to call it adult daycare. But my question is really specifically around positioning and preparing your company to access capital. I know that many times banks are looking for like a certain amount of profitability, cash on the balance sheet. Can any of you kind of speak to how you prepared how you sort of prepared your company, your profile to ensure that you were successful? And can I please get one of those blue sheets before I leave, because they're out, Ms. Bryant?
My card as well.
Thank you.
Who wants to take that?
I will.
Okay.
When the recession hit, obviously, we're heavily invested with inventories of vehicles and our fixed assets of our buildings. But we rely on the GMACs and other financial institutions and Chase and Bank of America for our daily operations. And I would advise you, because that was a very scary time, and I'll just be very honest, we had a loan that was going to be called 18 months from that time frame. And it took me that entire 18 months, after us being in business 30 plus years at that point, to find someone who would take our loan and take the risk in considering what was going on in our industry. And I know other industries, I mean, obviously everybody was feeling it, but the one thing that I learned from that very horrific and scary experience of always thinking that you're going to be okay, because we've always been okay, is to really make sure that you're on a monthly basis really getting into your numbers, and if you have an accountant or someone who's in your financial team, to really work with you for you to understand what those measurements are that they're looking for, because unless wherever the young man went who has the bank, we don't have that every day. So we got to rely on the Banks of America and Ally and everybody else. But if you don't know what your measurements and where you need to be to remain a viable entity, and when you're getting to a threshold of concern, that's a problem. And not that I didn't know, but it was just a time to take a deeper dive to make sure that I did stay on the other side. And those things today I still do on a monthly basis, because I think I'm just worried that something's going to come back. But you can't, like I said earlier, education is key, but if you don't know what you have or where you need to go, you can't rely on someone else to help you, because they may not always be there.
And if I can, I'll just quickly add, for my colleague Tasha, you can connect with her, Tasha, for some specific resources in Detroit that can help you.
Make sure that you are making the right relationship when you do it, that the bank is fully understanding who you are, and that you have some commitment documented about where they are with you when you're going to do that. The last thing you want is to get assistance and end up sharecropping your own business.
And also make sure you have really good counsel, and that you understand all the provisions of your agreement, and that you really understand what you're committing to.
Yep.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Greg. I moved here from Silicon Valley a year and a half ago. I do venture private equity and some angel investing. My largest deal to date is I got JetBlue funded. So I wanted to invite all of you, if you want to know what's happening in Silicon Valley, there's a website, if you type in Stanford and Proactive Skincare. If you go to that website, we have 300 free videos that explain what's going on in the Valley and how each of those companies were built, including Proactive. And one of the biggest challenges I see is people understanding the parameters for which the money is being handed out. One quick tip for you is something called the 10x rule. So the difference between an iPad and a laptop is 10 hours of battery life. So if you're going to step into that realm, managing yourself to that parameter means you have unlimited access to capital, and there's no problem getting access to it. In fact, if you meet those parameters, you'll actually have different firms fighting to give you money. So my intrigue is, how do you build businesses where it's not hard to find capital, it's you're turning down capital because there's so much being offered. Thank you.
Would you repeat that website so everybody can get it?
So what happened is that there's a bunch of entrepreneurs at Stanford that wanted to figure out how to help other businesses get going. So every Wednesday during the school year, we have a different CEO or entrepreneur describe how they built their company and got it funded. So if you type Stanford and then Proactive Skincare into your Google bar, it'll bring up a talk given by the founder of that company. She was a derm doc at Stanford. On that website, it stands for Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders. That website has another 300 to 400 other companies and how they got started, including Google, Cisco, and a number of other Stanford startups that have gone public. So I reference you to the Proactive because most people have heard of that product and they've heard of Stanford. So you've typed in those two names. She'll explain how she put the company together, including how they chose the name, et cetera. But it also gives you a conduit to how we build companies and what's fundable.
Great.
Greg, would you be so kind as to tell us your last name?
Crossfield.
Thank you.
Okay. Greg Crossfield.
Okay.
Greg Crossfield.
I'm going to take one more question if there is one, but we're winding down because I believe in 3:30, meaning 3:30, and that's what time we're supposed to close. So do you have a question, sister?
Yeah, yes, and I'm going to give it to her. Just want to thank our sponsors again, Bank of America, General Motors, and J.P. Morgan Chase for sponsoring. We are going to get the information up, but our whole marketing team is on site for this conference. So look, if you don't see it, in the next couple weeks, we'll send it to all the attendees who've registered. So we'll make that information available. Thank you.
Actually, before we get that closing question, because I don't want everybody to run out of here. And one of our course, not only sponsors and valued partners, is the Minority Business Development Agency. So Joanne had a couple things she needed to plug. I'm going to ask her to do that before our sister here asks her question.
So yes, we didn't talk a lot about innovation, but around the venture capitalists from Silicon Valley, we've also partnered with the Shark Tank and a couple of other partners who are in the pitching that are looking for deals all the time. Some of them are early stage company type deals where if you have an innovative idea, concept, or et cetera, that you'd like to present and pitch for potential investors. We also are in that space now. So we have this partnership with the Shark Tank. We have other partnerships on that level. And please be innovative. You know, if you have innovative ideas, you heard what the young lady said, who's basically in STEM field, if you will. We are always looking for, and through our partnership with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, looking for innovation. So please stop by and see me. I'll hang around afterwards for anybody who has any questions.
Okay, last question.
Good afternoon. My name is Shantia Lewis. I am not necessarily asking for myself. I am a newly elected official in the city of Milwaukee. And when I was elected in April, I became the second African American woman to sit on the council at that time. Well, during this time.
Please?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. So just trying to give a little context. So in this male-dominated field, I'm in a very interesting situation because I represent an area where it was a big booming area with businesses flowing, and when our mall closed, everything kind of just left with it. And so I'm trying to be innovative. So I'm asking the question of just thoughts or nuggets to kind of help think and strategize outside of the box, and helping to, one, bring small businesses, attract them. We have all of this inventory and no interest from the big boxes because there isn't a catalytic project. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that I may be missing, any nuggets, any tips to kind of help springboard some of the activity that I'm looking for. I don't want to just do something same old, same old.
Right. I think you have to, like you said, think outside of the box and try to figure out how to reposition that asset. I think that the government has got to help with figuring out how to provide access to land and opportunities, to create pre-development money, acquisition money, so that folks actually can develop and help change the use. So it's going to be about most of us, and I was just will say, we are not all born with families that can provide us with capital. So if you want to talk about really creating businesses, you're going to have to find a way to help redevelop that project and incentivize businesses to come in with tax breaks and some other things that are the tools. I mean, we have to use our political capital, and I'm happy to see you there because that's a tremendous opportunity to change, the landscape.
And you got elected. Congratulations on that. But you want to know your community as well, and the community's appetite and ability. And go back and I'm not saying it was a great movie, but go back and watch Billy D. Williams in Mahogany and understand what he's saying, and he'll tell you how to build your community up. And he'll tell you that when people campaign and say they made the biggest deal ever because they bought a building in the middle of Manhattan for $1 million, that it may have been the most rogue thing they could have ever done, and that a lot of people got devastated by that kind of stuff. And you can build your community back up. Go watch it. It'll teach you quicker than I can tell you.
So I wanted to just chime in on that. I would encourage you as a newly elected official to get familiar with Select USA. That is the preeminent conference for identifying and attracting foreign direct investment that is vetted by the U.S. government. All of the municipals from across America convene here in Washington, D.C., along with President Obama and all of the economic authorities. And there are a lot of foreign investors looking to make investments in prime space like in a Milwaukee. So if you want to talk more about that, I'm happy to visit with you on that.
Dr. Malvo, I just want to jump in quickly. This entire panel, thank you to our distinguished panelists, has been webcast live. So we will have this video recording and available. So all this information, if you didn't get it down, we will be able to provide it all to you.
Okay, what is that link? Come on, I need the link. Everybody needs, but she did it. Just come up and take one of these microphones and give us the link.
Here it is. I'm going to read it to you guys.
Her vision probably better than yours, Jan. Let her do it.
Go on, girl.
She got younger eyes, that's all.
Okay, but she ain't there quick enough. https://twitter.com/ Okay. https://twitter.com/Twitter.sibu space MPANZASA, Z like zebra, ASA, slash status, STATUS slash, period. A lot of numbers. 770-098-110-2296 10496. Bingo.
Okay, that's a lot of numbers. Tell you what, y'all.
It's worth the what? Y'all want to see it? Y'all want to see
Okay,
it?
young lady here is going to hang out for a minute. You can look at hers, and you can look at Jan's. With this has been great. I want to just thank everybody for coming. You could be anywhere. You're here. Give my panel a round of applause, and thank you very much. Continue to learn and enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. Malvo.